Hey everybody, and a happy Sunday to you. I hope you all are well. Triple T here, coming to you. I'm down in the woods on my property. It's hot, and it's tough to find a cool place outside. But on my property, I've got a lot of woods, and I've carved me out a little place down deep in the woods where I can come and sit under the shade trees and be a little bit cooler, which is nice. I want to say before I talk about what I'm going to talk about today that I've just been overwhelmed the last few days with the response to my channel. I really appreciate everybody who has subscribed to the channel and liked the videos and commented on the videos. I really appreciate that very much. I hope to bring some meaningful content to you every day, and hopefully we can build this thing up and get this thing rocking, and maybe it'll turn into something. I hope so anyway. That's the plan. I want to talk today about Donald Trump, and I want to get to what's really on my mind, but there's something else I want to talk about first. I want to touch on all these what I consider to be frivolous indictments against the president. I'll just go ahead and jump ahead and say that yes, I believe that there was a lot of fraud in the last election. That should really surprise nobody. My cat's coming to see me. Kiki, over here, darling. That should really surprise nobody. Historically, there's fraud in every federal election in America. That's not really news. That there were shenanigans that went on in Arizona, in Georgia, different places, Pennsylvania. That shouldn't surprise anybody. It's obvious that the deep state and those who are ensconced in power, bureaucrats who live in the richest neighborhoods in Washington, D.C. and Northern Virginia, they didn't want Donald Trump back in office, and he was kept out of office. It's as simple as that, in my opinion. But I believe that all of these, my cat's playing with me. Hello, sweetheart. You can jump up here and I'll put you on camera, but I doubt she will. She's camera shy. But I believe that all of these indictments against Trump, these frivolous indictments, which is on Joe Biden's watch, make no mistake, this is the current occupant of the White House taking his revenge against the former president. They're doing all this with his approval, his go-ahead, his thumbs up. But I believe it has the potential to backfire. Now, and I believe that it's going to be reflected in the next election in 24. Now, I have to admit that I'm somewhat of a cynic, because I said to Rich Barris one time, otherwise known as a People's Pundit, who's constantly talking about polls, and his latest analysis is that Trump in the polls is just overwhelming not only the rest of the GOP field, but he's swamping Biden in a potential rematch as well. And I said to Rich, what does it matter if the votes don't count? And he said to me, point taken. He said, but all the more reason why we have got to simply overwhelm the polls in 24. And he's right about that. There can be fraud in elections, and there will be fraud in elections. I don't doubt that for a moment. That shouldn't surprise us. But if you overwhelm them, we might be able to overcome the odds. At least I hope we can. Now, I say this as a man who is not the biggest Donald Trump fan, because Trump is a unique figure in American history. He's a populist. He's not really a conservative at heart. But of the options we have, he's probably the best option we have, as long as he'll put Robert F. Kennedy in as Attorney General or HHS Secretary or something like that. More on that in just a minute. But I want to quote from James Woods, the fantastic actor who's very active on Twitter or X or whatever we're calling it these days. And this was James Woods' take on all this indictment nonsense that's going on. And this is what he said. If they convict Trump of all charges, millions of Americans will feel deprived of their candidate, and they will be in a civil war state of mind. And I think James is on to something, and I don't think we should underestimate what he's saying. You know, there's a lot of angry people in America right now, a lot of people who are feeling really disenfranchised, and if they proceed with these indictments, this nonsense, it has a potential to backfire, and I hope that it will backfire, and I think that Trump could play this chess game to his advantage, and I hope that he does. Trump is no idiot. The man is a billionaire, and billionaires are not typically stupid people. They're usually fairly savvy. They have keen intellects, and if he can surround himself with the right people, I hope that he does. He can use this to his advantage. Now, what I wanted to talk about today, if I can, was where Trump went wrong, and this is in reference to his first term. Of course, he came into office in 2016 after defeating a very poor candidate, and you know, he assumed power, and well, we all know what happened in the next 4 years. A lot of good things happened, some not so good things. But Trump has vowed, if he's reelected, he's going to drain the swamp or clear the swamp. But of course, we've heard this before. I'm not really sure what that means. Now, I can tell you in my own personal fantasy world, were I president, or were I even better king, God save the king, and I had the power to do it by draining the swamp, what I would be doing is eliminating large swaths of the federal bureaucracy. And by that specifically, I mean I would eliminate entire federal departments. The Department of Education would be number one. And I would just continue on and on and on, dismantling the federal bureaucracy, which is way too big for its britches, way larger than any of the framers and the founders of the country had ever intended. I referenced Rush, the late, great Rush Limbaugh the other day, and I was thinking about something else that Rush had said, because a lot of people had noted in the past that Trump came into office, but he was still surrounded by swamp creatures. We know the drill. I mean, he had Jeff Sessions in there. He had, of course, he fired, to his credit, he fired James Comey, but he put in another swamp critter in Christopher Wray. He brought in Bob, oh my goodness, his new attorney general who replaced Sessions, who was a Bushman from the get-go, whose name escapes me. Maybe you can help me in the comments. Mike Pence. I mean, he was surrounded by people who were lifelong members of the swamp. Some he couldn't do anything about, but some were staff choices that he could have done something about. And I remember Rush defending him on this point, acknowledging that he was surrounded by creatures of the swamp by saying, well, look, Trump is a novice at this particular game, if you will, and he doesn't know these people. He has to make these appointees, so he does the best that he can. I think that's a lame argument, and I'll tell you why. All that Donald Trump had to do in 2016 was to find one man, just one man, who is not an obvious swamp creature, swamp dweller. And I'm thinking specifically about a man such as Rand Paul. Donald Trump could have appointed Rand his chief of staff, and Rand could have advised him on the good people that he needed to fill all these various cabinet positions and various roles within the federal government. A little bit tricky, of course, because one of the primary members that shouldn't have been there was his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, but that's another story. So I think the defense that Rush gave for Donald Trump in that regard was off base. Now, Trump is still saying, and he was here in Alabama last night talking about how he's going to drain the swamp when he gets back to Washington. I don't know what to believe. I don't know if anybody knows what to believe. I don't really know what he means by that. You know, before Trump became president, he was popular on that television show, Celebrity Apprentice or The Apprentice. And one of the features of the show is every week he would fire somebody. Trump's big on firing people. Well, that's sometimes a really good thing. If you get to be president, that's a really good thing, because what I was hoping to see in his presidency was a whole lot of people getting fired, but we didn't see that, not that we know of anyway. The only one I can think of off the top of my head would be James Comey, a well-deserved firing, of course. If Trump gets back into office, and I think he is probably at this point our best hope, then he really needs to get to firing some people on day one. Trump has a support, I would say, of the majority of Americans. It may not appear that way, but I believe there's a lot, as I said, of really angry Americans right now who are ready to support him. But he has got to get serious about draining the swamp if he does. This is a man who is being persecuted and prosecuted, and he's facing things that he shouldn't have to be facing. I'm glad that he's not just retreating to Mar-a-Lago and saying, "the heck with it all." I think he's on a mission. I hope he's on a mission, and I hope he follows through with this mission by doing exactly what I'm talking about, by getting to Washington and getting serious about getting rid of these lifelong bureaucrats and politicians who come into office with modest means, and years later they become somehow multimillionaires. Hello, Nancy Pelosi. Congratulations on your new South Florida mansion. Don't know how you did it. You must be a savvy investor. I hope that Donald Trump can, of the current lot that is running, I hope that he can win, and I hope he'll get serious about draining the swamp. What we've got right now in the Republican primary is Donald Trump and everybody else. It reminds me of a night of, let's say, professional wrestling, where you've got the world champion going up against his challenger. And that's what everybody's there to see. But all the preliminary matches are a bunch of what they used to call midget wrestlers, or, gimmick matches, when everybody was there to see the main thing. And I think everybody else that's running right now for the GOP nomination is just a pretender. I think that DeSantis, Christie, Tim Scott, all the rest of them, they're in this race knowing they're not going to be elected president, but they're positioning themselves for the future, possibly an appointed position in the Trump cabinet, but probably primarily they're in the race to raise money, because there's big money in running for office, lots of big money. Nobody of substance is challenging Biden. RFK is giving it all that he can, but he's never going to get the nomination. The Democrats will make sure of that. And all these other GOP wannabes would really save us all a lot of trouble by just getting out of the race. And let's just get it on one more time, Trump, Biden too. That's what I believe it's going to come down to, and that's what it should come down to. And I believe this time Donald Trump is probably going to prevail. I certainly hope so. I'd like to hear your comments down below. Let me know what you think about this. Hey, if you would subscribe to the channel, I would be grateful. If you would give me a thumbs up on the video, please remember to do that. That would help our algorithm to get our channel more noticed on YouTube. I would be very grateful for that. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a fantastic day. Tomorrow is Monday. I'll see you then. Trailer Trash Tim, over and out.